And we're live.
Welcome to Fractally Afterparty. My name's Doug. We've got another Doug
Oh
and
yeah, the
another
announcement.
Dan.
Welcome to the Fractally
Hey,
after party.
I have something
Let's go.
controversial. I want to talk about something controversial. I am so jazzed, confused, and excited by Jesse's prime fractals proposal. The
I
thing that,
too.
okay, the thing that confuses me and disappoints me is why did nobody in Fireside Chat talk about it? And why was I server muted in Fireside Chat the entire time?
It's not the correct place to ask that.
I know. Okay, well, sorry.
You should ask that to Stéphane Bisson or to someone of the Eos Nation team.
Right. That's an off-topic
the
question.
Fractally baby team.
All right,
So
well,
it's not the right place. Yeah, baby. Okay.
I'll tell you what happened.
No, I tell you the truth here. I say always the truth.
I also
Always
wanted
this
to
is
talk
not good for
in
me.
this last EOS Fireside chat, and I was muted too. So I sent a message in the regular chat. There's like a stream chat or something. So and then after that they had it. So I suggested if you do want to talk, say something in the stream chat, and then I'll unmute you.
Yeah.
That should be frustrating for you, Douglas. I think for the two Douglas, that should be frustrating. Yeah. But,
so two things.
Where do the funds actually come from?
What funds are you talking about?
The ones that Doug mentioned that Jesse put up a proposal for, and I wrote up a quick after one.
Oh, well, the proposal is for the ENF, I suppose, mostly for the ENF and the Fractal team. So it'll be asked the block producers and the ENF for funding. I think most likely.
Who owns the key to those? Is it ENF, Fractally, or we know the actual person who owns them?
That's the 21 block producers who own the key, system contracts to be able to deploy funding in different places. Although I suppose the ENF also has their own account too. They have EOSI.savings, I think, and they have a couple of million EOS in there that can be deployed as long as the block producers don't, stop them.
Well,
I've asked.
I've asked. I asked Eves about this specifically, and it's actually not as simple as the ENF has access. So there's EOSIO savings, which is what we already had, and then there's I think it's EOSIO.grants or something like that, which is a separate. That's sort of like the ENF's funds, but they don't have access to that. Instead, 15 out of 21 block producers have access to that. So each time the ENF wants to bring in more capital, they need to okay it with the block producers before they can do that.
Yeah, but they do have some built up from the previous time. I think they have a couple million in their account or something right now, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that.
I thought there was a certain amount.
I put into the discussion chat the link to the Google document of Jesse Jaffe, the proposal of 3 prime fractals that we are discussing every Monday. So next Monday, Marco, if you want to join. Your proposal that you have sent to MindWeb, I have received, and I have included into the Fractally stand-up meeting, because your contribution is more about how to be compensated temporarily now that we are into this experiment, because we are not paid, etc. So I have put into the Fractally stand-up meeting. So
I thought that the best way to go. I saw the proposal by Jesse, and it didn't list temporary. And anytime EOS is coming to Fractally, I thought once Fractally fully launches.
But you are welcome to come on Monday. You are welcome to come on Monday. Sorry to speak the truth here again. If you come on Monday, Fractally brainstorming session on EOS is not just to come and say hello, and you want just to hear. If you come, it's because you have something to share. So if you have made a proposal, come on Monday and explain your proposal. Because if you just send to the mind map, that makes no sense if you don't come and explain. So that's not the same as the Fractally
it's a tentative. It's a tentative yes on the Monday. I've already.
Monday it's 14 UTC. It's 14 UTC.
I found out about this through Eden, empowering Eden contributors. And I'd like to go back to the funds because it seemed like the funds were already being made available and we were just asking for an advance on it. Now, that's what I want to clarify. That we were asking for an advance, not new set of funds.
I think that it was asking for the funding. One thing that I might recommend here is, I don't know, maybe saving this conversation about Fractal on Eos for the meeting on Monday and talking more about people's experiences with the Fractally meeting that we had today and Fractally in general. I mean, I'm also happy to talk about Fractal on Eos too if you want, and I do very much recommend attending. I've been attending every week along with Patrick, and Douglas is there often.
And Jesse and Douglas.
Yeah, Andrew also made a great
Joshua
proposal. It was great to
in.
see you there too. But yeah, it might also be good to focus on Fractal this week. And then there's also lots of people we haven't heard from too. So if anybody wants to share some thoughts and we haven't heard from you, then please feel free to speak up as well.
Yeah. And Andrew Ware was making a proposal about how the funds are flowing from the ENF to Pomelo to Eden, and from Pomelo that could maybe serve as liquidity fractally pools. And we have seen this proposal. Jesse has seen this proposal. Myself, I have also seen Dan Singjoy also. But this proposal is into the Fractally stand-up meeting mind map, not into the Fractally brainstorming session on EOS. So I try to take the information, the knowledge, where it has to go. But that doesn't mean that you cannot come into the Fractally brainstorming session on EOS Monday, Marco, and to speak about what you think. That's the place to come. We are totally open, and we do gradually proposal to implement we want to do a gradual and geographical decentralized proposal to implement the component of the white paper of Dan Larimer on EOS, because we think that EOS is the infrastructure layer to build Fractally on.
Well, that's clear. What's clear is that Fractally,
because we have a good sign of ENF, we have good signs of Fractally LLC also. Denis Carrière of EOS Nation, CTO of EOS Nation, and lead of Yield Plus working group ENF, has reviewed the proposal made by Jesse. Amy Hines also about the mathematics, because that's some maths there.
Here's the way I looked at it. You have Fractally that's targeting every platform. The idea is consensus. EOS is good enough to support it because of how fast it is. So another Fractally for EOS would be prudent. So my thinking is, well, how do we bridge that gap? And a second Fractally meeting. We could be the Fractally brainstorming meeting. And the Fractally brainstorming meeting on Mondays could meet to, like I said, accounting, you said liquidity, and everybody who attends that meeting gets a certain amount of EOS. Yes. It's not taking over Fractally. It's not setting a standard for Fractally. It's a second meeting contingent using Fractally respect. There's no respect given because it's not official, at least starting out, but there is EOS given, and that EOS is contingent upon the meeting of going to the Fractally on Saturday. So because it's contingent upon the meeting on Saturday and the respect, and it's connecting EOS, we can market that as a second Fractally meeting, and thereby undeniably warranting some sort of additional funding if Fractally is already getting the funding, because we're like a backup meeting, whatever percentage. Accounting-wise, I can't see the logic against that.
I don't think there's any commitment to funding from EOS or ENF or the block producers or anyone. I think Dan proposed taking over the development and maintenance of the Mandel evolution of the mainnet, and that that proposal was they didn't even treat it as a proposal, so it was just rejected as a non-proposal. And so I think, as I recall, Dan Larimer's response is, well, we're not, Fractally has no dependence, and we don't need any commitment from the EOS community for funding or to provide liquidity or otherwise, which to me was a shock. And to me, that puts the elephant in the room. And to me, that's why, Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, that's what, and then Jesse had this idea of, well, let's make a proposal that could be acted on by the EOS network community through the ENF and the block producers and ask for a multi-sig to grant funding. And here's how to do it. In fact, let's have to reach a global community, let's have 3 primed fractals. And then that will be the vehicle through which the EOS community, through the ENF and the block producers could agree to 1 or 2% of their inflation allocation as a mechanism to launch and jumpstart through grants and funding and gifts this fractally white paper project that Dan Larimer has proposed. And but as of today, this morning, I think it's we're still at step 0, not even at step 1, because I think there's absolutely no commitment whatsoever yet to fractally, as I understand it.
I just want to say that the brainstorming session on Monday, it's not that will not be only about discussing fractally on EOS. The original idea was, after the second meeting fractally, was to brainstorm together around the mind map about any subject that we want to discuss. And Jesse was coming with the beautiful idea, I have to recognize, to implement fractally on EOS. And I was like, what? And that makes sense. I agree, baby. But it is not only about that. So we will not speak 10 years of only brainstorming session on fractally on EOS. There are other things to discuss, like my wife, my cat, and okay. So that's not only about that, okay? My original idea was to share and collaborate together and build something from nothing. So that was that. And now it's fractally on EOS. We will see. And okay, just that.
So cool. Sounds good. I'm looking forward to talking about your cat and wife maybe sometime.
No,
I'm just joking, but we can talk about different subjects.
It's a joke. I have no cat.
Okay, well, we'll have to talk about your non-existent cat then.
But I have a wife, yeah. I have a wife.
Schrodinger's cat.
True.
Okay, cool. Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and then I was also going to say too about like as far as commitment. So yeah, the ENF hasn't signaled commitment to fund it yet, or the block producers yet. But that's like what Jesse and we're working on, like to make a great proposal that would find something that the ENF wants to do, as well as Fractally community wants to do to secure that funding. And then also on a much smaller level, I suppose the EOS network has like made a very relatively much smaller commitment to funding EOS fractals, in that I am building Eden Creators, and I ran on Eden Creators in the Eden election and also in the Pomelo season, and like the main platform was to raise funding for an EOS fractal, and so I've raised something like 500 EOS. So I'm happy whenever we have like a fractal that wants to form, like specifically for helping EOS to use that. I mean, it's like the mandate to use that funding to have it where like we do these meetings, and then people get like a few EOS for participating and for being ranked highly and so forth, and then we can maybe use that as an example to raise more funding. And I think I saw Marco raise his hand.
Yeah. All right. So my understanding was that if you're contributing to Eden, you're contributing to Fractally and vice versa, for at least for the time being. So I coined the term Fractally Eden in a way that can be used as an adjective, or like an advertisement or whatever. So I'd just like to see if we can get over this. When we're talking about EOS, are we talking about really fractally from Eden members, or are we opening up the fractally to the whole mainnet at this time? I mean, not the future, but I mean, moving forward, are we talking about Fractal Eden or EOS on Fractal?
I'm not really sure if I'm following what you're saying here, Marco.
Well, take Violet Garden. You can't get into Violet Garden unless you have an Eden account.
Right.
You can get into Fractal without Eden. If we do Fractal Eden, you can't have any funds unless you go join Eden. If we do EOS on Fractally, we can't really say that as nicely. And then we're targeting members. So essentially, by Fractally Eden, we're targeting every Eden member. Say, come on over. There's EOS in it. There's respect tokens in it. Why aren't you here at these meetings? Or why aren't you at least contributing on social media or something with it?
I have an idea of, if I understand correctly, that it's my understanding that originally Dan was so excited about his Fractally concept that he wanted to hire a development team to assume ownership control for upgrading the code in the EOSIO and rebranding it as Mandel or whatever new name for it. And then his vision originally included this Fractally governance system as the next evolution of Eden, and so that Eden could actually become a fractal itself, and then Fractally would use and introduce Violet Garden into Fractally, so that the Fractally white paper would include a first iteration of social networking, because a Violet Garden would provide basically, a social network that would be owned and controlled by Fractally, and that Eden would be a fractal itself, and that Fractally would actually be funded through a liquidity allocation of inflation, or not liquidity, and a grant of the inflation tokens to help add tremendous value, a few dollars a token, a huge amount of funding through tokenization of the Genesis Fractally treasury, through which Fractally could launch. And so because that was scrapped from the get-go, it's my understanding that Eden is a self-contained project of the ENF, because the ENF is funding it. And so Eden is a piece of software that can provide, through smart contracts, an election system that provides governance over Eden on Eos is the Genesis Eden. So it was potentially envisioned that the block producers could hand the decision-making power of the whole Eos network as from a foundational governance system, so that the block producers could essentially become validators to the decision-making powers of Eden on Eos. But that didn't fly yet, or potentially at all. And so Eden is still the system of members. There's a group of Eden members who have I don't know if Turing complete, a smart contract system of electing chief delegates, et cetera. And so now, because Dan's original vision didn't take off, then Fractally, he's assumed the power to just, we could call it self-funding, with the assistance of Dan Larimer to push forward the Fractally project. And so that's happening. And then Eden just is gonna, it was really exciting to see the chief delegates elected, and they're really trying to push the ball forward with Eden. And so that's exciting to see. And then, the ENF is also made tremendous inroads in upgrading and rebranding and renaming the main net and handling the code and all the and just for example, I apologize for rambling so much. I'm doing a brain dump to try and just share my thoughts on it. But one of the things that I see that's exciting is in the Yield Plus blue paper that Zach Gall is so excited about. We have a new DeFi system where if you have a mainnet that has side chains, that the mainnet inflation can then be thrown into DeFi, into individual side chains that are they're creating a snowball effect because of, imagine a tree that you water it and add sunlight and the roots grow down. So it's a virtuous cycle where if you add, you could call it on-chain DeFi, where the inflationary tokens get put into smaller liquidity pools, and that attracts new members who are participating in purchasing tokens, which grows that side chain, and then the liquidity pool staking groups earn returns on their staking of their investment and it all is watered by the main chain's inflationary tokens that come out each year. And so there's kind of a symbiotic relationship between people who want to participate in tokenized ecosystems. And the excitement that Zach has, I think, is kind of fun to see because he sees that the inflationary tokens from the main chain can actually stimulate a whole economy. And I think he's very excited about that. And I think that's an idea worth sharing because he may be correct to be excited about the future of the EOS mainnet because of that phenomenon that the inflationary system can provide liquidity for other pools of staking investments that provide real life, realizable interest on your investment in a way that is already proven by history that it can work to build an economy. And so we may be onto something there. And I hope we are.
So Jay, thank you for sharing the thoughts, and there's a lot of great thoughts there. And I see a lot of people enjoyed the brain dump. I think there's a lot of great ideas there, but I also do think being that it's a video call, and we're all looking at each other, it probably is helpful to keep shorter messages. I mean, especially because Andrew had his hand up for a while. James Martin mentioned a really good point last week that it's helpful for all of us to be aware of when people are raising their hands. So I don't want to moderate too heavily, and I think you have a lot of great thoughts and people are sharing it, but I do think that probably video calls make the most sense to keep points shorter. I feel it'd be more interesting when there's more back and forth because we're all engaged with looking at each other. So
bye everyone.
Okay.
I enjoy. I have to go. The government is calling me. The government here is my wife, so I have to go.
Okay.
I have to go, and
Monday, right?
I enjoy to. I enjoy it to ask. Sorry, I enjoy it to hear about each ID. Douglas, Marco, Doug, the only one, and Jay. So and all of you. So see you again, and have a good weekend.
Okay.
You said
Sounds good.
1400 on Monday, right?
See you, Patrick.
Thank you. Yes, it's 1400
Bye.
UTC on Monday, I believe, and then it switches between 1400 and 1900 UTC.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Bye.
See you, Patrick.
Bye. See you.
And then also, I just want to say one quick thing before going to Andrew about what you were saying, Marco, before. I think that Eden would really benefit from using some of the Eden treasury to fund Eden fractals, and they can work together very well. So I Eden members are talking about how do we get people to contribute, and I feel the fractally process, even if it's not fully adopted by Eden, it can partially be adopted to have these processes and pay Eden members. So yeah, but anyway, I know Andrew's had his hand up for a while now. So what's up, Andrew?
All good. Yeah, so I'm this is actually piggybacking more or less off what you were just saying. I feel like there's a lot of sort of looking for permission to bring fractally onto EOS, or bring fractally into Eden or whatever. I see fractally as a really good DAO kind of value distribution mechanism, partly because unlike Eden, it doesn't drain resources as you go. You just put it into the liquidity pool, and then you make more And then presumably if the people are creating more value within the system, then they're taking out of their sort of their tokenized, their respect tokens, then the value of the respect tokens will increase. But what I put into the mind map, it might not have been the right one, the EOS on fractally on EOS rather. What I was talking about there was individual Eden members. So for example, it involved combining Eden, Pomelo, and fractally. So for example, I have a Pomelo pitch. I put it out there, raised a little bit of money. It's not enough money to hire anyone, but I still want to bring people on. So what I want to do, which I can't do yet because fractally isn't released, but what I want to do is take that, I think 150 EOS, something like that, put it into a fractally liquidity pool for my project, so that if people want to get involved, they can get rewarded for it without me having that much actual capital. And I think that we can take the same tactic and use it. So if there are Eden members who want to support fractally, they can take their Eden contribution and they can put it into a fractally liquidity pool for the EOS network. And that way you don't have to get the block producers to decide anything. You don't have to get the ENF to buy into anything. It's more just if individual people are interested in bringing fractally to the Eden process, or vice versa, whichever way you want to look at it, then all it takes is just individual people who are all like, oh yeah, this is cool. And they put their money into it, or rather put their EOS into it. And then they can gain some benefit from that. And really that will act as a test of the process. Because I think a lot of people right now are sort of like, okay, we just got this new Eden process, like seems like it's working pretty well. It ain't broke. Why are we trying to fix it? And that's a totally rational kind of perspective to have. So that's why I think it's important for individuals who do believe in Fractally's ability to take sort of the decentralized leader choice that Eden has, and putting a more easily trackable, or like the main problem with Eden is, like you say, oh yeah, I'm going to build like interchain blockchain communication, and you raise $30,000, and then how does anyone know if you're actually going to do it or not? So fractally, I see as a really good way to actually award people for the real value that they've provided. But the only way to test it properly is to get real money at stake, just like Eden. You know, Eden's got a big honeypot right now, and the fact that it has that big honeypot is sort of a test of the system. So, like, if the chief delegates all decide to award themselves, 1,000 EOS, then the system doesn't work very well. But yeah, anyway, I don't want to ramble on too long, but I did want to. Patrick mentioned the thing that I put, so I just wanted to describe it because I thought was relevant to what was going on.
Andrew, do you have a direct link? I don't know if you just gave me an idea or if it was your idea, as far as the fractally, the mellow, and the funding and things like that. I'm looking for your submission to the mind map, but I keep doing a circle.
Yeah. Let me see. Oh, well, I have a link to the Google Drive file, which you can check out. And I think this might have been from an earlier mind map or something. I haven't been too up on the mind map thing. There we go. Yeah, that's.
I'm also curious too, I guess, while we're looking at that link, Andrew. So it sounded really interesting what you're talking about, like kind of like I don't know, making it simpler where anybody can contribute to the liquidity pool with EOS, or I suppose any token, and you could use it to bootstrap your project with Ursa Polaris, I think you mentioned. So yeah, I'm very interested to learn more about that. And then I'm wondering, like, what would the token be that has a liquidity pool with EOS if there's no it's just like supposing that a token's already formed, if there was like a Eden fractal or an Ursa Polaris fractal, that there'd already be like a, say, Ursa Polaris token that would side with that to start out with, and so you started out with the token already? Or is that like, I don't know, a liquidity pool that isn't having a second token yet?
So a lot of this depends on the details about what the Fractally software itself is like when it's released. But the basic idea is using the Fractally software to create your own token, that token being the respect token for whatever your fractal is. So in this example, let's say there's Polaris music fractal. I would probably be the first one to offer liquidity into that liquidity pool. But once there is liquidity in that liquidity pool, there is actually value to the token when you start creating it and then distributing it in these meetings. And the idea is, if I have my own project, I can take whatever funding I want to, put it into a liquidity pool to bootstrap that token, so that that token has some value behind it. And then in addition, this is sort of the other piece of what I was talking about. If Eden members could create their own fractal, which would essentially be sort of transitively the Eos fractal, because Eden is Eden on Eos, and if you make a fractal for Eden on Eos, then it's a Eden on Eos fractal. So it is still sort of related to Eos. And the basic idea is people could put whatever their Eden funds are into that, to more, just because that way it's easier to track what people are doing and stuff like that.
This would be a way, I mean, just from the developer's perspective, this would be a way to pay developers contributing to different fractal teams with that with those token distribution from other projects. At the same time, content creators and whatever. And I also see some dynamics within Mamelo that can take the next step. I don't know if you've thought of that, but it can be applied so many ways, because the whole idea is you're exchanging value, and these are all intermingling things anyway. But if you haven't looked at the Google Drive, the chart, the flow chart, really opened my eyes to some stuff. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I don't know if Andrew just left. He had to go somewhere because he's muted and his picture's not up. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting idea. I saw it and I haven't really had a chance to look into it, but I think that, he got a call. Yeah, I'm very interested in exploring this more. I'm also wondering too if we can do it like, I don't know, making the token actually on chain. It adds some complexity to it, which might be worth it to do right away. But I'm also wondering if like maybe we could even do that with just the off-chain respect, like we have with Hive right now, and then maybe just have a pool that is understood by the community that this EOS is meant to be a liquidity pool here for this when we're ready, but nobody's trading yet. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but perhaps helpful. And yeah, I think overall this idea is very interesting to explore. So yeah, thanks for sharing and discussing, of course.
Hey guys, so along this line, like I think there is some value to explore these mechanisms in a real way. Because there is a lot of things with liquidity pools that aren't necessarily, I guess, intuitive. And that's why people like go into DeFi and like lose a bunch of money. Like I know I did at first. So one thing I did is I just shared a link. I put like a fake respect token on the Wax testnet. So if anybody wants to take the initiative to compile a list of accounts from members, and you would need to have their Hive account as well as their Wax testnet account, and take the effort to send them this respect. There are AM pools set up, and we can adjust the rewards of those AM pools. So there is the potential to imitate what is shown in the Fractally white paper, definitely with the respect pools. And I believe we could also do it with the mutual respect. Although there is one mechanism which is not clearly defined, and that is the mechanism in which you can be rewarded both for your original respect token and your mutual respect token. So that aspect would require a custom smart contract. But yeah, so I set up all the technical side of this fake respect token. All that it would take is somebody to say, hey, I'm going to make this list, decide how much of these tokens to send out. What I suggest is that we all start with 1,000 of these fake EOS tokens, which are wax, because it's wax testnet. And we have like this sort of game where you can not only start to accumulate your respect, but you can start to stake to these pools using your asset, which is this wax, as well as the respect that you earn, to sort of start to take economic decisions with your liquidity. What I think, or how we can make this real, is at the end, whenever the real respect token comes out, or whenever we defined an end, we say, okay, we're going to have some real life prizes, real on-chain prizes for who ends up with the most respect. And I have donated or pledged to donate 144 purple from our project, which is worth about 100 United States dollars, to sort of get us started. But I will say I am not open to spending any more time to manually compile this. What I will do is I will set up a permission on the contract so that any person who wants to do the manual labor can send out the tokens as well.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds really interesting, Douglas. And yeah, thanks for taking this initiative here. I've been following it here and there. So yeah, I'd be interested if Andrew or anybody has other thoughts. But I'd also be interested in like maybe merging what Andrew was talking about with this idea too, like doing it on the Wax testnet. Seems like there's a lot of potential there, but also maybe even doing it on the EOS mainnet if we can, and doing it with EOS, with the Eden community, like Andrew was saying there too. So I wonder if there might be, something to explore there.
There definitely is, but you have to pay for it. That's the only thing. Somebody has to pay for the EOS to set up the account. Somebody has to pay for all the transactions. So I actually was planning to do it on mainnet, and then I thought of that, and I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna just pay a bunch of EOS for something that may or may not be used, right? But yeah, like I think that anybody who wants to expand it, if I can help you in a technical way, like if you need another contract up, that's sort of a fork or something like that, I'm more than happy to do that, compile and put up any contract. But yeah, let's explore. And my feeling is we're learning. And one thing I stressed in the meeting today is like it's important to have these iterations, right? It's important to have an iteration of a fake token so we can sort of play and find out, oh, this is happening, this is happening. And what I sort of see is we're not really getting those iterations from the team. What we're getting is, trust us, and we're going to have the final iteration, which is going to be perfect. That's not Fractal, but it is what we're seeing. It's a centralized model. So I'm trying to sort of put a counter model where we do this sort of iterative things. Whether or not that is accepted, as we are finding out that there's no desire from the Fractally team to say, hey, we're going to use Patrick's contributions mechanism for now, right? We haven't heard from the Fractally team. We're going to use this for now, with the exception of a few procedural things that Dan has seen in a meeting and then said, we're going to try this. So yeah, I'm down to try anything and create iterations towards the final goal, as opposed to developing everything in secret and then just saying, oh, this is the final version.
Sounds good. Just out of curiosity, do you know how much it would cost to deploy like the contracts on EOS and to have the transactions and so forth that would be necessary for that kind of thing if like the Eden community wanted to use it?
It wouldn't be a huge amount of money. It would probably, you'd have to pay for RAM for the contract. I don't know exactly how much that would cost, but I'd say along the lines of maybe $5 for the RAM. So, it's not a huge amount of money, but then, yeah, you have to power up your account and to send out these transactions. So if the transaction model is as efficient as they say, it should just be a penny or two. So really, it's not a lot of money, but having it on testnet just makes it so that nobody has to pay money. Nobody has to power up their account. And with the free power up model, you get about two transactions, maybe a little bit more per day. So I think that if you did do it on mainnet chain, you would sort of inhibit people from really playing with it, because in order to really playing with it, they would have to have EOS in their account to power it up.
Okay. Yeah, sounds great. Thank you for explaining, Douglas. That's very interesting to think about. And I'm looking forward to thinking about it more and probably discussing it more at some point.
Dan, what's your plan with the what's your plan as far as fractally and the eating creators?
Just generally speaking, or
Yeah, or walk me through it again, because I heard what you said, and it seems like you're uh, set on connecting EOS in some way, and it seems like you're also set on um, rewards or moving EOS in some way. So my thinking is, where does respect fit in? Where does the EOS fit in? Um, and what do you need to do to be part of the creators community that you're putting together? Do you need an EOS account, sort of thing? Do you need to be an Eden member? Well, just walk me through whatever the thing is.
cool. Well, yeah, thanks for all the questions, Marco. I appreciate it a lot, and I'll try to answer everything. And if I forget anything, because you asked a few questions, then please feel free to remind me. And then Doug asked some questions too, so thanks for those too. So just to, I guess, provide a high-level overview and try to give you a quick summary. So Eden Creators, I've been building it for like over a year now, and intending it to be a fractal in itself and to be a fractal of fractals that helps launch many fractals in the future for all sorts of like fun and creative and helpful purposes. Right now, it's mostly a media outlet. Like I'm making a blog post to summarize what we've done with Fractally so far, and I'm also producing some videos from our Fractally meetings. The purpose of it is to help everyone cooperate fractally and make the best experience possible. And aiming to attract creators and like build a community of creators and creative people and with all kinds of talents to help make amazing content like videos and music and writing and art and so forth. It was inspired quite a bit by Felix, who's on this call. I think listening, he made like an awesome video explaining how Eden works, and I think that having awesome content, and I know a lot of people on this call and in the community are making really awesome content as well. Having that awesome content is like super helpful to get the word out. So that's kind of what like the mission is, I suppose, to create amazing content to help everyone cooperate fractally and make the best experience possible. And then there isn't a like a joining process per se defined or formalized right now, other than just I'm looking for people to join and help. So if you're interested, then please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to discuss it. I would love to start doing like calls and so forth to get it going and make more content and so forth when the time is right. And then also for the Pomelo and Eden election, I raised funding to help fund an EOS Fractal and Fractal forums. So like part of what I'm aiming to do with Eden Creators is make amazing content, and then it's also partially to help create fractals. And so my platform in Eden and Pomelo was to raise funding to use for forming an EOS Fractal and Fractal forums, which are like a kind of a fractal to help Eden make better decisions. So I think that probably I feel like I've maybe missed like one or two things that you asked, and also I haven't asked
No, you said
Joshua's, but I don't want to ramble too much. Does that make sense so far?
yeah, you said fractal forums to help make Eden more contributors. I got the creators part. I just wasn't sure how it tied in specifically. So the forums, is that going to be extended to the creators as well, or is that solely for Eden? And is that Eden delegates, chief delegates, or what's the vision for the forum?
So the vision for the forum, the word initially started from Chuck McDonald, and this is kind of using the Fractally process in a little bit of a different way. So whereas Eos Fractal, or like most fractals and the fractal we've been doing so far has been like kind of ranking people's contributions each week, the Fractal forums had a bit of a different focus. And I say had because I was working on the proposal quite a bit over the past few months, but I haven't worked on it recently, but I'm still very much looking forward to doing it. So the Fractal forums have a different purpose in that the plan is to use consortium, which is a tool in an application on Eos where people can vote. And so the plan is to make it so people can vote to pick a topic to discuss during a Fractal meeting, and then or it might be an Eden meeting even, because I don't know if the Fractally process, I think the Fractally process will help there. But yeah, basically make it so that we can not just judge on who's contributed the most over the past week, but judge on who has the best idea about this specific thing. Like if we want to say, I don't know, should Eden launch a liquidity pool for Fractally tokens that we were talking before, and then we can all meet with that common purpose to discuss that, and then at the end of that, then people can get some EOS tokens that are rewarded from the budget I've raised, and if anybody else wants to fund it, and then there also could be, some respect token that is working alongside that as well.
I've used a consortium, and I'm saying that it keeps jumping up every once in a while. All right, so yeah, I love the idea. Work with the idea, vote on the idea. I don't know how well it fits in, but I know it can, maybe too far out, so we disregard it. But you have the creators on Eden Creators, you have musicians, videos, poets, maybe informational content, or maybe less focused on that. You have the forum, which is, again, the ideas which creators do. I'm working on, my proposal for Mello was ROS, kind of an recreational orbital station that hovers around EOS, but ties into the EOSIO or Mandel ecosystem. And one of the things I really wanted to get in there at some point was neighborhoods. Fractally can be looked a little bit like neighborhoods, generally as mentioned, having a mayor sit-in or something like that. Fractally might be a town, or commonly would be a town. So the simplest way I thought to get in neighborhoods was something like what Felix was doing. He was walking around, he had making things more real. So you snap a picture of your neighborhood. And I really got the idea kind of from the EOS marketplace, because they actually have some products that they put in and they slap EOS branding onto it. But one of the things that got me the most was bike. The bike was actually welded with some metal EOS branding on it, but they have packaging and things like that. And that alone would be a neighborhood picture, something submitted to the orbital station, something submitted to the forum, if the forum was meant to be in larger scope. But in any regard, since you have creators, since Douglas has the CXC for musicians map and things like that, it was along those lines. But the idea behind the recreational orbital station was that it was a place to start where where people don't have any blockchain experience, and then gamify getting into blockchain. Wax is easier, so Wax first, then EOS. All you need is a Google account, which everybody has that. But you don't have to submit your Google account. If you're there and you land on the page, you see EOS maybe, you see Wax maybe, but just any action you take on there could register. And the simplest actually, submit a picture of your neighborhood. With that, we can get either a location if people want to bring that in, or some sort of personalization. That's a creator, everybody's a photographer thing. Something to build on that when you come back next time, maybe you want to submit your Google account. I know people give it freely, but eventually getting everybody to an EOS account through that. So anyway, I know there's like issues sometimes with some of those things, but I think it can fit in somewhere along the lines there. So I thought I'd mention it.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for mentioning, Marco. I've checked out the project that you have in Vanilla a little bit, and I'm looking forward to learning more about it. And it sounds like you're exploring some really interesting ideas, so I'm looking forward to learning more. And yeah,
we
thanks.
don't have a forum. We don't have a social thing. I think Violet Garden should be used more. When we're meeting on Twitter, even Twitter Spaces, I think it should be mandatory that we have some place to meet that's tied to the blockchain. if you get what I'm saying. We're here on Zoom, but nobody's using the blockchain of EOS. We could. That would be. It doesn't take much. Like,
Yeah, I totally agree, Marco. And I value this voice, like this voice of these simple things, because like in general, there's complex problems and simple solutions, and I truly believe in that. And the more that we can understand the complexity of the problem, which I believe is only comes from understanding each individual member, what your value, what you want to do, then we can develop these sort of simple solutions, right? So yeah, I'm sort of done my role of saying here's how we fix everything, but I do appreciate you sharing your voice and like making it known that it's not that hard to set up a community, like a Hive community, or you know, these sort of official things. And also I think that there might be some sort of corporate thinking that the Fractally has, where if somebody's going to contribute in a meaningful way, we have to like pay them, right? Or in like an official, like this is what we're doing kind of way. So maybe that's stopping them from saying we're going to use this right now, because there could be a liability issue. Like if they sort of endorse something that could go awry, maybe it's a liability issue. Um, but yeah, like thank you for that. And what I've suggested is a Hive template. We just have like a simple markdown template where we can post contributions, as well as a Hive community which anybody can set up. Or like really we just need to use Patrick's system that he already has, right? But these are simple solutions that are available, which only come to mind once you understand the complexity of the problem.
is Patrick's MindWeb on a blockchain?
It is not. And also Patrick, oh, I guess he left, but it's kind of hard to find like the link to contribute. So I think Patrick could maybe do a better job at shepherding us into there, but I have been using it and I think that it's really valuable.
Oh, I love
no,
it.
it's not.
I love it. But here's the thing. Has anybody here heard of Eos Charity? Or
No.
Charity? I just came across it this week investigating. They just released a monthly report of the donations they have for medicine, families, and things like that. They were giving people EOS. I haven't dug too deep into it, but it's their monthly report. So I don't know. I mean, I love what EOS Marketplace is doing, and you know, when I look into it, I seem to get more and more, and there seems to be stuff just to keep on uncovering stuff. And EOS Charity, I don't think is in the same region as that. So why? I mean, why aren't these things getting more attention? This is people using EOS. These are people branding EOS. These are live pictures of real people. They're using it for medicine. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a Fractally group, but I definitely agree with the general consensus. Like, the more that we can show what each other's working on, and like in my mind, like I was thinking about this for Pomelo, but it's not just about supporting each other, but it's also about building relationships. And one thing that's missing in Pomelo is a real declaration of here are my skills and here's who I'm looking for to make this vision a reality, right? So we have these great projects that we are just to assume that the person has the skills to do it. And the only metric that we have is who's voting to these projects. So one thing in this theme of exposing the relationships, exposing what's already done, is for Fractally, maybe there's a way we can just say, okay, I can throw up smart contracts. I can compile smart contracts. I'm not so good at smart contract development. I am good at WordPress or whatever. But to have that and sort of say, okay, here's what I can do. Like if you're building something, if you're contributing something, maybe we could work together, or I'm thinking of this more in a Pomelo thing to make something real. But yeah, just what I've been brainstorming to sort of revitalize relationships, revitalize not only the discovery of our contributions, what you're talking about, but also the discovery of our own value within the community so that we can better harmonize and move forward.
Just a comment. I'm not sure if other people in the community are aware of this. I recently got hired onto EOS Nation, so I've been working with them, and they are working on a section of Pomelo for like either bug, what do you call them?
Bug reports.
The financial, what do you call it? Bug bounties. So they're working on bounties in general, bug bounties and also code bounties. I think it's meant to be specifically for Pomelo, but I'll ask and see if there is some mechanism that EOS Nation could use to allow that kind of thing for, as you were just talking about, Doug, like working on fractally stuff or anything else like that. But it is definitely a need within the ecosystem for people to be like, I need this, and other people to be like, I can do that.
For sure.
I just wanted to share.
Hey, do we have a job board?
Thank you for
Because
sharing
every
that.
once in a while I get 3 or 4 Twitter job announcements. Is there an EOSIO or EOS job board or fractally
There's a
job board?
Telegram group called, I believe it's called EOS Jobs, as well as there might be one other Telegram group, but I think that's the one that's most used.
Right.
And it's across all EOSIO blockchains, and that's sort of where developers go when they're seeking for work. But again, like it's one of these things that's kind of not well known, and I've definitely fielded multiple questions from people just jumping into different Telegram groups and sort of directing them to that group, which shows me
Right.
that not everybody knows about it.
I don't think fractally's there yet, but like you said, fractally would do well to be more decentralized.
Yeah, and like for me, that's the whole point of a fractal, is like not just the decentralization in the sense of open sourcing the code, but what does decentralization mean? You know, it means gotta take centralization. All the power is in one place, and then the opposite of that. So all the power is in these outside places, right? And what I see that has been my frustration is that I haven't seen any power transferred outside of the Fractally team with regards to procedure suggestions, with regards to saying this is what we're going to test out right now, as well as like the key concept of a fractal besides decentralized going in back into the center. Where was I going? The key concept is these iterations that I'm talking about. So yeah, like the more we can iterate, the more we can test, the better, the further we'll go in the long run. I love Dan. I love everything that he's done, but at the same time, I've seen him create beautiful castles of technology. But then as soon as he sees like a window is a little bit tilted, he'll rip down the whole tower. And that's sort of what we're dealing with EOS, with the power up model. I have spoken out against it from a market perspective as far as the intrinsic market pressures based upon the tokenomics. So what that shows me is like there's a big risk with this centralized model that the actors within it are not taking a holistic perspective. And I also believe that that holistic perspective should be sourced from the individual members, myself included, you included, everybody included. I feel like our contributions could be more discussed. They could be more brought back into the center, as well as like we just need these sort of playful iterations. Like the contribution system that Patrick set up, that should be the first iteration. I really believe that. And we'll learn from that. We'll learn what's easy to post, what's not to post. And then, you know, when we arrive at a conclusion naturally through this decentralization process, instead of claiming we're creating a fractal system, but developing the system based on the old centralization model, right? So I'm in a like an awkward position as me, because I wrote a paper called The Democratic Web in 2020. I am very, very into fractals, into understanding them from a perspective beyond the second dimension, 3D, 4D with time, right? So what I see is a danger that we create something calling it fractal, and we sort of make it so real, make it so rendered down that if it's not a true fractal, it will then become what people think of when they think of fractal governance. And people will have this sort of false idea about fractal governance because fractally has not decentralized the process of coming to agree on what that fractal governance system means.
I think the key is the council. You have, if the teams can dominate so that it's not about productivity, it's not about voting or whatever, that the council just ends up being stagnated. I think that's a key issue. Now, what I was going to bring up is how EOS doesn't feel the way it did maybe a year ago or so. I'm not saying Block 1 is any good or whatever, but there's a sense that as a culture, there's been a movement, and this is the best way I can describe it, toward the airline industry and away from general aviation. That being the airline industry being so centralized that it continues to form alliances that essentially, even though they're different companies, from the manufacturing to the management and all that, they're essentially one. Where in general aviation, the idea, you couldn't support the airline industry in there. And if you look at Fractally in the same way, Fractally couldn't support EOS the way it couldn't support any centralized blockchain. And I think the contingency is, how does the council form? How do those top 12 teams form? Since we don't have all the answers, since we don't have the final product or the final white paper, hesitant to say it, but it does seem like it's a big difference over Eden. I've looked at Eden, and there does seem to be some influence that goes from one election to the next. But I did hear Brock Pierce talk recently at the last chief delegate meeting, and I think we may be out of the water. We may get out of the water of seeing influence go from one thing to the next, from one election to the next. And I think part of the contingency of that is the chief delegates taking power from the ENF. You can't be reliant on them to contact with the block producers, because ultimately it's about governing that system. So again, the biggest question I have is, how do the council form from those 12 teams? Will those 12 teams be the same 12 teams? Will it be the same influence, even if they are or not the 12 teams? Will the same money or funding or developers or voice or whatever culture, political objective always remain the same? And yeah, no, you're absolutely right. If it's not, if it's a fake fractal, that could be more dangerous. That could absolutely be incredibly dangerous. I don't see anything outside of the council as far as that can. I was going to say, if there is a way to focus on members retaining more power, to maybe teams, to take a second look at how teams will influence the rest. And I do believe teams should bring more respect in, but will teams start to make members insignificant? I don't think so, but I haven't really decided on something there. Love to hear somebody else's.
Yeah, I feel like it's this system is not really done yet, let's say, as in we're not actually, we're not using smart contracts, we're not using anything really blockchain, aside from keeping track of things on Hive. Yeah, frankly, I don't know. I personally think that Eden works a lot better as a selection mechanism for thought leadership. That's sort of I've been using those words for a little while now, and I think fractally is better at accurately measuring or accurately awarding people value based on what they've contributed. That said, it could be the case that sort of measuring, it could be the case that the thought leaders, the best thought leaders to have are the ones who are providing the most value to the ecosystem. But it could also be the case that the best thought leaders are just people who are able to achieve consensus within a group of 5 or 6 people. So those two mechanisms are slightly different. And I'm interested to see, I think I agree there's got to be some sort of, I mean, I've thought about this for a while. Currently, the ENF is very centralized because Eve is the one who's running it, essentially. And he, as well as I'm sure everyone else in the EOS ecosystem, knows that that's not an anti-fragile way to have things set up. And so my guess is, or I guess my kind of intuition is that either Eden or Fractally or some combination of the two will end up acting as the selection process for the ENF's leader. And I'm interested to see, sort of like you were talking about, what the different effects of the different kind of decision-making mechanisms are. But I think at this point, it's a little bit too early to judge the fractally process and the teams and stuff like that, just because it's not really implemented fully. But yeah, it definitely should be interesting. And I think you're raising good points for sure.
So I want to ask you guys, like, what would you say would be the most valuable part of the process for you, that you have experienced and you would think would be good for any sort of governing consensus reaching? I guess I'll give an example. So like today we did we did a different way. Instead of nominating who's we think is top and then debating, everybody put their list into the chat, and we actually found that was way quicker. And I know it would have been because like the top 2 were sort of at an ideological battleground, and I was one of those 2. But so that's one thing that I would say I would want to bring to another process, was this idea of everybody showing their hand all at the same time. Any other things that you really resonate with and you think should live on beyond Fractally?
Well, we did the same thing as far as putting the list out. And there really is. It's kind of like in an intelligence department, you have operations and you have handlers or analysts. If you're going to put the list out, that's coming at it from the analyst point of view. If you're going to do operations, you're thinking about, well, can they deal with the intangibles and take the ball and run with it? Now you have Fractally that's meant to reward past accomplishments, but people always talk about the future accomplishments. Well, there's the present, and that present is, I think, really where I see Fractally now, where Dan mentioned there are tools that are like kind of there that everybody's going to be excited about, and his emotion clearly told the story that he's sure that it can get done. But just because you can see a building go up doesn't mean all the floors are in, all the safeguards are in. You don't have to wear a hard hat and all that. And that's carrying the ball. That's the operations thing. So if we're in a meeting and someone raises their hand, there's some people that may just go along with it. So maybe that may be contrary to it, but there is something to be said of a pure, um, a pure conviction that regardless of the experience, one's going to hold to that. And as far as putting out the list, I said I liked it. I liked it a lot. There could be what happens on the traditional web where people are conditioned to respond later down the road the same way. And some people are good at that. Some people are good at pre-consensus or things like that. Or some people are just popular in the system, or what they're after has been popular. Like if developers are popular this week, or as Dan said, bringing the celebrities popular that week, that may resonate past its time, past its term, or its time. Anyway, I kind of, I don't, we initially had said that the first highest rank would go, and then subsequent ranks would go after that. And when the tools are built in, I think they can be built in to maximize both the analyst and the operator. Maybe not the first one that goes out, but after that one, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that I look forward to whenever we have enough data that every person can look at to be able to quantify this, so that whenever we build the system, we can tailor it to whatever is the best mechanism. So, for example, we're talking about number one, you throw up a list of everything, versus number two, you all nominate number one and number one nominates number two. Right now, we're doing both of these things in groups, in different groups, although we don't have any metric that's known to determine how effective it is. One metric would be the time that it took for the members to reach consensus. You could do further processing on this information by taking each member and determining how much their average time is to reach consensus based on the meetings that they're in, and then putting them in one group where they use one method and one group where they use another, and then comparing that to their average, their average contribution. So these type of things, these type of iterative processes are what I'm looking forward to see, because right now all we're doing is talking. We're just talking about these things. Oh, we like this, but we don't have any point of data to reference. And perhaps I'm the only one that truly values that. I don't believe that, but perhaps I'm one that values it more than the average person, as somebody who designs biomimetic fractal curation systems. But I really think that as soon as we can have that real data to say, we tried this process, it didn't work as well as this other process, so we're going to develop the code to work through this process, compared to, Dan came in today and he wasn't aware of the last meeting, so he talked about the process where the first person, rank 6 then nominates rank 5. Well, I know my group didn't use that, and other groups didn't use that too. So that begs the question, well, what are they designing the software for? We don't know, right? So the more that we can do this in a good way, the better. And that's the reason why I'm asking you guys right now, like, what's something that you really love that you think is a process that's really working? And for me, like, just from today's experience, it was putting in the 5 names, which I believe solved a lot of issues which would have been in our group, which were very social issues. Me being very opinionated versus John Williamson being very, dedicated to the Fractally team and doing a lot of work, and really feeling like because he's on the team, he is automatically number one, no matter what. So these very human processes are what it's the complexity that I'm talking about, which is not being honored to find these simple solutions, right? Again, like, I'm trying so hard, like, just to see the good, and just to point out what's good, to point out what's working. And that's why I'm trying to bring our focus back to what is really working. And hopefully, maybe by posting this video, somebody from the Fractally team, hopefully they watch, they decide, okay, maybe we do need some metrics to decide these things. Maybe we do need to look into what process is working in an informal way before we put it into code in a formal way, right? Yeah, that's my rant.
That's an appreciated rant. I do take a little bit of issue with your statement that we don't know what they're building, because if you look at the white paper, it's very clear. They're very clear about we're building this. It relies on 6 people achieving consensus, and that's really all that is. So like, for example, what you're talking about, which is the means for coming to consensus, like in the white paper, it explicitly says that each group of people who are coming to consensus, they get to decide however they come to consensus.
Yeah.
And really the most important thing is that all of those people are coming to consensus and that they are publishing that consensus on a blockchain or similar kind of ledger system. But I do definitely agree that the data and having data points that we can refer to is essential. Time, the amount of time it takes to achieve consensus is I think a good one, but not as a sole measurement tool, just because, you know, if I railroad everybody in my meeting and just say I'm not going to agree to consensus unless I'm number one and my list is agreed upon, you know, everyone else has an incentive because they still want to get respect tokens. They have an incentive to achieve consensus quickly, even if that does not accurately reflect the value of that. But I see Dan has his hand up. I want to let him say something. Stingjoy?
Dan, you might be muted.
Yes.
There we go.
Yep, sorry for the delay. I was just trying to turn my phone on. But yeah, so thanks for all the great thousand conversation, of course. And I just wanted to reply about with what I think Andrew was touching upon a bit there, and then also to what Douglas was saying. So during the group that I was in today, I was in with Joshua and also Jason Jenkins, I believe his name is pronounced. And Jason has been creating, I don't fully understand exactly what he's doing, but he's doing something that's very helpful, and Joshua expressed a lot of appreciation for it. He's sending some information to the Fractally team where he goes through like the data for each week, depending on who got ranked and stuff like that, and then somehow cleans it up and makes it easier to format. And one of the things that Joshua said after he explained that was that the Fractally team, because it's a small team and it's a small team, they want to focus on building what they're building, and then also they wanted to leave room open for people in the community to build different parts that I suppose weren't like the essence of what they're aiming to build, but that can be helpful. So I felt like that might be a helpful note to include here, that, you know, Joshua has a lot of contact with the Fractally team, and so he's pretty aware of what the Fractally team is aiming to do, I think. And so there might be many situations in which like different formatting things that Patrick is creating, stuff like that the Fractally team is just kind of staying out of it to allow the community to see if we want to rally around anything specifically, you know, without having the Fractally team influence it or dictate it too much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, because I had a conversation on the Fractally, Mighty Networks thing with someone who was talking about that. I'm not sure if it's the same person, but someone who was talking about gathering a lot of scientific data. They were a data analyst, I think. But I'm excited to hear that's going down, because that's like, to me, that is, I think I guess I was listening to the Eden meeting the other day, and Brock was talking about key performance indicators, KPIs. And I think that's, if we want to have some sort of KPIs for how well this process is going, I think that, like Doug, like you were talking about, the time it takes to achieve consensus, and then also tracking all the other data That's exciting to hear. That's cool.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And I see Mark saying something, but just to add something quickly, there are quite a few people doing data analysis, like Ami and Matt Langston were doing that too, and then also Jordan Ackerman. So there's a lot of exciting work going on there.
I wanted to sort of go back to what Andrew was saying. What they're working on, and I've talked to, I believe, 3 Fractally members, which told me this. They're working on a peer-to-peer video conferencing solution, which is not mentioned anywhere in the white paper.
It
does not say anything about that. So let me finish, please. According to the goal of Fractally as described in the white paper, it's to build Fractally as described in the white paper. So we should not be valuing them for this contribution. I went very hard today to explain to John Williamson that I do not value a solution for something that we already have, when the real problems, the real benefits which we should be building in code are not only undeveloped, but the developments of community are being ignored. So we are trusting a Fractally team, which is working on something not described in the white paper in secret. So if this is just a huge concern to me, that's great. You know, at least I've expressed my concern. But if that is a concern to you, that they are not working, at least according to what 3 people have told me, they're primarily working on a video conferencing solution, which is not in the white paper, maybe that's something that needs to be talked about.
Definitely needs to be talked about. I just want to say that the video conferencing thing was from the very beginning mentioned that that's what Fractally wanted to do.
I just searched the white paper and I didn't find as far as
it may not be in there.
What I see is at the end it says Fractally facilitates video calls, records the calls, and publishes them to IPFS. That's what we're doing with this. You know, it doesn't require any additional software, and there's absolutely no mention in the white paper of a decentralized video software. So
right. Okay, that's it.
I just want transparency and honesty. That's what I want, and you know, like, I really want a fractal geometry to exhibit here, because if I'm here developing fractal software and then another company comes along and says we're developing fractal software and they're much more popular, they have a control over how people view that. And what we're doing is we have the opportunity to either grow the name of fractal governance or shrink the name. And Andrew mentioned that it's in the white paper that we don't have any sort of process. And in my mind, that was because it's best for us to figure out the process in a decentralized way. So I really stood behind that and understood that from the very beginning, that I believe that Dan was doing this like this so that we could learn and then have a better sort of suggestion for how this works. And I'm still holding on to that belief and hoping that that's the direction that we're taking. And thank you for letting me finish.
Just a quick point, and then we can move to Dan, who's got his hand up. I don't know why I'm sort of figuring out who gets to talk right now, but I will say it is. I guess I'm not taking issue with your statement that it is not mentioned in the white paper at all. That said, if we are going to be using a decentralized solution for video conferencing, recording video, and then publishing it, is that Zoom? Zoom isn't decentralized. Like, essentially, in order to achieve what it is that they're trying to do, unless we're like essentially Eden is built such that it leverages Zoom and is more or less a plugin for Zoom that is reliant upon Zoom. If Zoom, the company, decides that there is too much, let's say, risk involved in allowing a power structure that attempts to usurp current power structures, if Zoom decides that that is not within their purview, that they see it as too dangerous to the other powers that are currently, say, invested in Zoom, then Zoom can just kick Eden out. And then there's no more Eden. So I think that I mean I'm not taking issue with your statement that it's not in the white paper, but I think implicitly it kind of. I mean, it's not implicitly in the white paper, but if you're looking at what the mission is and you're looking at what the vision is, it's kind of necessary to have your own video conferencing. So I to be clear, I was also a little bit worried about the fact that Fractally is building their own video conferencing software. It's pretty straightforward to get a bunch of smart contract developers to work on a smart contract. To get a group of 12 smart contract developers to work on a video conferencing solution is not quite the same thing. And to me, I do see a little bit of not quite risk, but somewhat risk in sort of them biting off more than they can chew. That said, I see why they're doing it. It's sort of, if they didn't do it, then there would be a huge fragility issue, if you will. But
yeah,
it's a fair statement. Sorry, go for it.
Oh, no problem at all. And thank you, Andrew, for helping to host it and to talk about people who's raising hands and so forth. I appreciate that a lot, and it's very helpful. And yeah, to add on what you're saying, I mean, a lot of the things that you said are things that I was going to say, so you said it very well, I think. But to add on a few things, so one, I mean, the Fractal team makes a big point about DAOs being decentralized autonomous organizations, and if your means of communication is owned by somebody else, then you can't be autonomous as a community. So it's essential to have some sort of video software where we can communicate autonomously without being subject to somebody else's discretion or governance. And then also there is like a lot of transparency. I think one thing to keep in mind is the Fractal team rushed a lot to get that white paper out. Like they set the date Tuesday because it sounded cool, and then they were just like trying to just get it out there. And so it's not a perfect white paper. It just, I mean, it's excellent in so many ways, but it's not like all encompassing of everything. It's not, I don't think it should be interpreted as the like final set in stone and everything. Clearly some things have changed already in terms of the process that we're using and so forth. And there also has been quite a lot of transparency. I think Marco touched upon it. Like, I'm not sure if Douglas, you listened to the Eden calls that were hosted by Lovejoy mostly, and also James Smart hosted them back with the Clarion team like last few months ago. But there's quite a lot of talk about having a video platform independent, and they're searching all sorts of options there. So I would say give some forgiveness and benefit of the doubt to the Fractal team in this situation for, just trying to get the white paper out, being a small team, and also talking about this and, building something that is needed to make the organizations autonomous.
Sure. And I do want to say that I greatly value that software. I can definitely understand that it sounds like I don't, but let me explain a little bit why I don't. So how do you tell the difference between a scam and a legitimate project? A legitimate project says what they're doing and does it. A scam says they're doing something and does something else, right? So my main concern is that well, I have a lot of concerns, but one of my concerns in this point is what was communicated is not what I have discerned from talking to 3 Fractally members. What I gained from the white paper is we're creating this fractal governance consensus system. And I do understand that this is a part of it, but as a software developer, we think in terms of bottlenecks, right? A bottleneck is what's preventing your computer, your system from running faster, right? And right now, what I think is that the video conferencing is a non-issue. It is not stopping us. In fact, it is the strongest piece of software that we have. It's the best that we have. Zoom is literally the best software that Fractally is using because it's the only software. So instead of attacking what is actually working, why aren't we doing what is explained in the white paper, which I really value. I really super value this stuff, and I'm really super excited to not only talk about it, but to contribute in a fractal way, to contribute these ideas of a meeting primitive, a contributor primitive, you know, anything that can help us to do what it says in the white paper, right? And if this is a problem, if this is, I don't want to say a problem, but if this was changed where we declared that we were working on fractal governance consensus, but oh wait, we decided that we need this other system, which you could argue is a part of that, that should be communicated so that we understand that what the team is saying is what the team is doing. And I have yet to get any programmers to show me anything. And I've been very vocal, very vocal.
My understanding is that video is the biggest thing on the internet moving forward here. And when it comes to competing with other blockchains, and Fractal is going to be seen as EOS, and EOS is always under attack. To promote the video conferencing would probably even weigh down heavier on the developers. So I can understand their wanting not to lead with it. That said, it could be worded in the white paper a little better so it's in there, it's so solidly in there. And then again, the idea is fractally consensus. So if it could be done without video conferencing, that should maintain an option. I'm going to be heading out soon. I've been up for a while. But I'm not against you, Douglas, and what you're saying, and I actually support it to a degree. But I am totally for the video thing as things stand now. But I definitely think that there's a way to word it such that if the developers were to come under attack and seen as EOS, that the small little bit of the white paper can both satisfy and not deny, but kind of shrug off. And the way that would be done would be partly that, well, fractally is first a means of consensus. Video, since it would be a primary means, and at the same time, it's not a prime time or mainstream tool as of yet, and then leave it open later. And then once fractally gains enough ground, because we don't need it now, we can just use Zoom until we grow to so many members, and then bring it in. And it could actually be presented well if perchance that Zoom were to not work for us for whatever reason, too many members, Zoom goes out of business, or doesn't like us, kicks us out, then other developers would focus to the video thing. And all that kind of blunts the attack from, say, Ethereum maximalists or EOS haters or whatever. And that could all be presented in the white paper in a certain way. And just leading with fractally is about consensus. Now, how you reach there, the members can determine that on their own. You don't need, like Dan is here, and he's not going live, and we've had members in some of the meetings that I've attended where there hasn't been a live member, so that proves that you only need voice. So you could do it with just your phone, and then now video is not part of the argument or feed for the sharks. And again, still, we want to use Zoom or something at this quality, and then allowing us to focus on the respect tokens, the blockchain, and the things you were talking about. But I'm pretty much done. Wasted.
Well, thank you so much, Marco, and I really do appreciate balancing of my crazy ideas, because yeah, like I'm a person that I expand possibilities, right? But also there needs to be people that are more practical and render those things down. Not to say that I haven't written over 40,000 lines of code for CXC and built an incredible system, but I also understand that for every one thing that I render down, I have 10 sort of crazy ideas floating around, and your opinions are valued. And also, I saw that you signed up for the CXC Moon Meet, and I hope to see you there. And yeah, I want to make it a little bit more decentralized and value everything that people say, and not only value what people say, but make this an organization that's truly fractal, that each member becomes the organization and has full power. So yeah, like if you want to explore both fractally and what we're doing, well, I know you already signed up for that, but I think that it would be super powerful to have not only my system on the side, but other people sort of doing their own like versions on the side. But then we're all still members of Fractally. So then we can sort of talk about, okay, well, in the Moon Meet, we have this tribal concept and, you know, this particular thing. For example, we're going to do like a chanting thing where like if a member gets accepted, we have like a little chant, and there's like levels.
Well, I got an
of
idea for you right
membership,
now.
Anyway,
You want a crazy idea? Here you go.
Yeah.
I mentioned in one of the telegrams or whatever the chats we had, aviation maps. You know, that was the thing that got me. It's a map, so I'm always looking to see if it's an aviation map. Well, you have a music meetup, right? People select the airport that they left to get to that meetup if they flew in, and then we just have it wouldn't take much, but to do an overlay of the aviation map. One of the cool things about this is a line in one of the classic books that is, when I take my students up, they expect to see the map outlines of the different states, and I got to tell them they're not there. So, you know, if you could present that, you know, in CX, and when people fly in, so like boom. So there's an idea.
Yeah, like yeah, I'm all about it. Like maps are what we're all about, and I've even thought about, you know, taking this map concept and having a map similar to CXC.world where each dot is a contribution and the color is like, is this a tech contribution? Is this a marketing contribution? Right? And it would really actually be a plug and play solution for the respect token, because in order to get your contributions bigger on the map, you would have to upvote for them and then they would get on the chart. So that is like a plug and play solution of just like things I've already developed for CXC, just like applying it there.
And you can take data of teams. How many teams have a radius of this many miles versus other ones that are global teams? You have global teams versus, yeah, you can just start throwing stuff. It's beautiful. I was so happy when I found it the first time, like a year ago or something, 2 years ago.
When you found what?
When I first found that map, there weren't that many people in there.
Oh, the CXC, you mean?
Yeah, I saw it a while ago. I forget how long.
I will say, I also found CXC a while ago, and initially, I was not excited but worried because I thought you had taken my idea, but they're very distinct ideas. So it's after that initial oh shit, I sat on this idea for too long.
I love your idea. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, like, I think your idea is mapping, but on a whole different level. Like you're mapping the content irrespective of geography and time. I'm mapping the attention according to geography and the songs according, or I'm sorry, the attention according to time and the songs according to geography.
Mm-hmm. So what I've designed is like a social map of the social connections between musicians, not just musicians, but also producers, engineers, all the people who are involved in the process. Yeah, I've got pseudocode and stuff like that. Sort of. I don't know. I haven't actually verified it with many developers to make sure it makes sense. But I'm a musician primarily, and just like had this idea years ago, and I was like, that would be so sick. But
no link or nothing. You seem like.
Oh yeah, I can send a link.
And you know, keep on focusing it, because I started CXC in 2014 and our app went up in 2018. So like, even if you are a programmer, it takes years of just really believing in an idea, continuously seeing it in your mind. And I truly believe in what you're doing. And it does make sense programmatically for me. Like, I know it's possible, right? And hopefully whenever we have these better discovery mechanisms of who can help with what, then you'll find somebody who has the time to fully dedicate to making it real according to this vision.
Yeah, and I have to say, the whole fractally, I mean, Eden and fractally and all that other stuff, like Doug, what you were talking about earlier about each person kind of making their own fractals and that being a piece of the larger fractal, which is very fractal in nature. That is like, that's what's up. Because it used to be, you know, somebody designed an app for their iPhone, or for the iPhone and Android, and then maybe it's open source. Somebody copies that app, makes their own version of the app, and there was like an explosion of all these different apps. Some of them, you know, address particular pieces of the market. Other ones addressed other pieces of the market. And it really took the person starting the first open source app to really get people to start experimenting with all of that. And what I see right now with these, with the current fractal governance system, as well as, Doug, what you're talking about with all these other different iterations, this is basically the beginning of an explosion of alternative governance. And to me, that is so exciting.
I take offense. It's not alternative governance. And it's part joke and part serious. John Glenn was in the Senate, a strong proponent for aviation. Harrison Ford, the guy from Saturday Night Live. These are all general aviation pilots. These are guys that fly over towns, community, county lines, state lines, where businesses don't need to wait on these extraordinary delays from airlines and stuff. And the airlines are essentially back in the 1800s, where they're following the same path as rail. There's no governance there. Glenn, as popular as he was, and things like that, that's the only governance that kind of exists. Without a fractal governance, without that, you just have two parties that are, the money's the same. It's just deciding which side to throw it on. Nothing happens. So it was meant to be a little bit of a joke, but at the same time, I take offense to it. Alternative governance. It's either you have it or you don't.
So your point is that if there's two separate points I could take from that, so I just want to clarify what you're saying. One of them would be our current governance structures are somewhat fractal in nature, which is true to some extent. The other thing that I potentially gathered from that is it is a completely different reading of it, which is what we have right now could barely be called governance.
We live in an aviation economy, and that can be argued only by the computer. The other economy that we see as governance, but is a facade, but we still play with it, we still pretend that exists, is a governance of our sea transports, where you have these shipping crates and these shipping yards that go on forever. That economy is every 2 weeks, because that's how long it takes to cross an ocean. That's not the economy of Amazon. Amazon is in the aviation economy. Essentially, if you were to remove airplanes from the world, what would the world look like? Well, there's no overnight delivery. Everything goes back. The world is connected now over 2 weeks. There's no Air Force One, so there's no diplomats meeting each other within the days or anything like that. So what else do we lose? Well, we may have computers, but we lose the act to act on them in a timely way. The governance that we have today is based on the aviation economy. The power that influences, that sabotages it all, is the 2 week economy. But anyway, so you really, what happens over those 2 weeks, and what can happen, what you can do with the aviation economy in that meantime, is such that while one's Bitcoin, one's EOS, yes, there's something to it. Yes, there's something to the ships bringing everything. Yes, you can calculate and forecast over things over those 2 weeks. But no, you can't do what you did with the COVID pandemic on the old system. If that makes any sense.
I think I understand what you're saying now. Yeah, you're sort of making a comparison between Bitcoin as the 2-week ship economy, EOS as the next day aviation economy. I'm curious, are you an aviator?
I learned to land a plane under New York Class B airspace. I have a master's in aeronautics. I did my thesis, wanted to do it on crypto, but I did it, but it was too young back then, so I did it on mobile technology for the next generation air transportation system. So I did that whole global networking of companies, governments, that whole next generation system plan. But anyway, that was a brilliant. That was just an amazing experience. But I will say this: if there's anybody that can argue against the aviation economy, it's the computer guys doing, say, 3D printing, where the idea is, well, who owns the intellectual property to the 3D printing that now happens in your home, because now you're connecting people instantly in that interchange. That's where we are now, but we're not talking about that. And fractally is general aviation. Fractally is, you have a place out in Kansas, you come up with a brilliant idea, or you have a little company there. You don't need to call UPS to take the interstate to the major airport there, to send it to Chicago, to funnel it to New York, to get it to wherever it needs to be. You can call somebody in a plane to send it over. Now, the price of that depends on, your price point for a general aviation aircraft, but we have the power to see our world and our economy in circles from the sphere of influence. And the problem that we face is safety, which they pushed overly beyond any means. And I believe with the powers that, if you know anything about the history, aviation has decimated general aviation. The airlines decimated general aviation. So from my perspective, the thing that they're looking at is being able to OnStar every aircraft the way OnStar could shut off a vehicle on the road. The problem is there's no pulling over to the side of the road of the aircraft. So you have a bunch of different things that come into play. And the biggest thing is, say, like the wind, air pressure systems that suddenly take your full gas tank to you needing to divert. So it's just a bad idea to do that. I think if you were to do something like this, you maybe have a low ceiling altitude, so you give pilots still the economy, the ability to go. But anyway, that's why Fractal is so powerful. That's part of the reason why I'm here, and part of the reason why I like to. I believe the developers are ahead of us. I just don't have made the full connection. This is why I love listening to Douglas and some of the ideas you have now, Andrew, for the first time here.
Thanks. Yeah, I feel like I don't quite know enough about the aviation industry. I like geeking out about various aviation things. There's like a YouTube video series I always watch. I think it's called Mentor Pilot, a guy who like talks about like a bunch of aviation, both sort of general aviation stuff and also aviation disasters, to see what the specific problems were that led to them. But it's a fascinating industry, and I don't know enough about it to completely understand the metaphor you're making, but I find it
how's this?
Very interesting and compelling.
This is from an NTSB report from maybe the early 2000s or something like that. It's not too old. So there was computers in the way. You're taking off in a passenger jet, maybe a 737. It's snowy out, mix of snow and rain. It's in the evening, and this is the last flight that you're going to fly before you go home to your family. There's another aircraft on the runway. Now, are you more afraid of hitting that airplane as fast as it can go with that other aircraft on the runway, or the administrator scheduling the time that you have wheels off for that last flight? It's your last flight. You're an experienced pilot. You've been with the company for like 2 decades. Do you wait for the airplane to go, or do you keep your wheels on the ground past the time that the union says you're supposed to take off. And that was an aircraft. That was an accident. The guy ran over the top of the thing because he didn't want to deal with that. That was the situation in the computer age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I remember hearing about that incident actually.
Right, there you go. And you don't get that in GA. You don't have to worry about that. And it's not meant to operate that way. It's not a financial thing. It's maybe it's fear-based or whatever, and Fractally is going to face that because it's different.
Yeah, interesting parallels there for sure.
I just wanted to say, like, it is super interesting, and like, I also have absolutely no clue about aviation, but like, you know, you have this unique value that you understand it, and you're able to sort of process what's happening in Fractally in a unique way, and it's super cool that you explain that. So thank you.
I think the thing, it's what I always say about EOS is how nimble it is, how quickly you can shift. I think that's the big key to it all. Do you guys know of any other fractal kind of government things that have existed for a while?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a paper called Web 4, and it was originally titled The Democratic Web. And in this paper, I lay out a basic system of fractal governance. In addition to that paper, I wrote something called Effective Collective, which I'm not sure if I've really shared.
I've heard what you said. I went through a bunch of your stuff that was in the CXC. I would like to see the paper, but I'm thinking of anything that's actually in practice by anybody. I'm thinking developers, from what I've seen, moving from GitHub to GitLab and then Cell, GitHub and all that, and just think general things that have transpired. Developers are ahead on that sort of consensus form.
Yeah, I'll share you this. I'm not sure if it's like, well, I have the tech here. I can share that too. But like, I have already built this system, although I didn't release it because I built it on Web 2, and the goal was like make it tokenized. So right now we're going back and re-tokenizing it. But because I already did build the system, you can like actually see it working. And I think it's really cool. So I sent the technical overview where I sort of go to the code, although that's not the best one to just get a real quick glimpse. So I'm looking for if I have another sort of.
My thinking is that it's so in need, that this is so in need that we're all going off what Andrew said, that there has to be a use case for it. Maybe not as much as well as Fractal, but to some degree that.
Yeah, so I mean, our use case is the music charts. You could imagine this would be a very complex way to solve the fractally, I guess, social network where they say that you can post content and that content is rewarded. But it is already built and it is working in Web 2.0, and the smart contracts are in development on our GitHub, on my personal GitHub actually, under CXC pseudocode. And within the CXC pseudocode repo, there's another repo called Real Contracts, where you can actually see the smart contract code that will run it. We have the HTTP file pretty much done, although I'm not confident. I'm looking for a review because it is my first C++ contract to go into production. So I haven't written out the .cpp file, which has the actual functions, although I have like listed out in comments what each step of those functions is. So if you want to see the system, you can check out that thing or that website, and basically it is completely working. These charts are being generated by time and by geography. You can combine those two things. So this is the first fractal economy that ever, to my knowledge, was completely built. Now, I didn't release it because, like I said, I wanted to go Web 3.0. I built it in Web 2.0. So I don't think I can really sort of claim like I built this system and it's up and working, but it is, and you can see it working on those videos. And then whenever these smart contracts are done, it will be launched.
Yeah, I was just thinking about existing fractal governance systems, and I guess in a way it could be argued that the United States is sort of a fractal governance system, just because it has local,
Agreed.
I mean, different kind of scopes of law. I don't know if that would be a good like, I don't know if that's an example of a good governance system, but it does have aspects of fractal governance. I'm sure there's also Native American tribes and stuff like that who've incorporated fractal governance, because it is honestly kind of a pretty natural way of doing things. Like, if you expected
Yes.
a society to build itself, then that might be a way it does it. Sorry, go ahead.
The issue with the U.S. government is the lobbying groups. So, you know, whatever there, and then even at the local government, there's issues. But yeah, it was designed. But Dan posted proof of humanity, which I had heard of, and the thing with the tribal government is, while it's fractal, at the same time, it doesn't transform like a transformer, or it doesn't move from one to like once you're part of a tribe, that's it. Where the American government, you can establish residence somewhere else, and sort of the whole protocol is in there for it. And here we're talking about, you know, a whole culture growing up and a whole nation. So I'm thinking that someone had the same idea that Douglas did, maybe not exactly, or to a little bit, just to advance the traditional system, and somebody was using it. I think maybe block producers are a little, blockchain just in general is a little bit like that, but you know, it's not really designed for consensus as Douglas' advanced ideas or proof of humanity is. So I'm just, you know, again, I still think that there has to be something there now with the computer age and everything like that, web conferencing, avatars and virtual reality things.
I'm sure there's probably some DAOs that might have good case studies, if you will.
Right idea, face tech.
Yeah, those were just some things. Like the paper, I want to rewrite the paper because I spend a lot of time on this idea of like bio keys, on using a unique expression that's not just a picture to unlock. And I sort of like went on this huge like intellectual tangent about it, but now I realize it's not important at all. So like I am sharing this paper because I think it's important, especially if you look at module 4, the geo-tribal system. That's what I really am seeking to build. And I actually wanted to talk about what Andrew was saying, like, is our government a fractal? And I really think that there's a whole bunch of aspects of the government, like just in the United States, like that is fractal, because you have similar systems at, you know, city, county, state, and national levels. What I would critique if somebody was saying, oh, this is a fractal, how would I prove it wrong, is just the concept that each piece can influence the whole. And while I definitely think that that is happening as far as legislation setting precedents, where a higher court can influence a lower court, as well as a lower court's precedents can influence a higher court's decision, there is a big disconnect when it comes to writing the laws. And one thing that I seek to help with through these maps is we've always had this idea to allow people to write their own legislation. And you can imagine cxe.world that instead of dots of music, it's all dots of legislation. And then all the legislation is on GitHub, so each person could fork the legislation and rewrite the legislation. And the constituent would either through a formal system or probably just informally would be aware that, hey, this is what the constituents in my area are voting on. This is what they believe. So as we design these systems, we have to realize that the founding fathers did the best job that they could with what they had available. And they didn't have airplanes, they had horses. And the representational government was a direct response to a desire to take everybody's opinion into account with the practical limitations of time and space, right? So as we sort of redesign these things, I think it's important to look at what the founding fathers did, as well as to understand their limitations and make sure that we're looking at it as a view of what would they do if they didn't have these limitations.
Let me get out of here, guys. Godspeed. Thanks a lot so much.
Yeah. I think you brought a really interesting
Good to speak with you,
perspective. I
Marco.
appreciate you being here.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you, Andrew. I
Yeah,
heard
you
your
too,
name,
Marco.
Andrew Ware.
Really, I'm shocked, but I'm glad.
I mean,
Yeah,
briefly. But yeah, I heard.
So far 3 weekends in a row. I'll go to bed Friday night, wake up Saturday morning like, isn't it nice to sleep in? And I'm like, oh shit, there's a fractally meeting this morning. So I apologize. I've missed like 3 in a row. I gotta make sure I don't get kicked out. But I gotta head out right now as well. It was great to meet you, Marco. Good to see you, Doug and Dan.
Yeah, thank you so much, and good to see you guys too. Like, I love these after talks.
Yeah,
I love your guys' like your thought processes and things like that, and I'm grateful to you, Dan, for recording this so we can share these ideas. And yeah, like I'm really stoked for CXE. It's like been so hard for me to not talk about, like, I developed, or I'm writing this article about this tribe system. And we're gonna have like levels, and you sort of declare your voluntary bond, which is like a commitment to do bare minimal things per month, like for example, be active in the community, and things like that. So I'm excited to show you this article, which I'll probably publish Monday, just because it's the weekend and nobody wants it. But yeah, like I love you guys genuinely, and I genuinely am stoked for both Fractally and the geotribal system that we're working on at CXC.
Yeah, you too, man. I feel like you bring. Sometimes I think your insights are maybe not timed to. Let's say I don't know the best way to put this. It's the timing of it is such that it ruffles feathers.
Yeah.
And there is a certain amount of sort of, let's call them negative externalities that come from that. But I do think that you're sharing your perspective is very valuable, and I'm glad that you do.
Thank you, Andrew. And yeah, like I've realized I can be a very negative person. And I've sort of came into Fractally with a weird energy, considering I've been developing this system, these sort of general ideas for years longer. So I guess one of the reasons for me coming in too early is that I've already got almost 4 years developing this system. So I've done 4 years of fractal governance, and I sort of have a wider view of what I think is necessary. But also it's the personality traits that I'm working through. And I'm grateful for this agitation, like, because I realize when I'm being a dick, you know, like today I was definitely a dick to John Williams, and so I'm not perfect. Like, I feel like I am making improvements. I'm making improvements in my communication, but also, like, you know, we're always in these iterations of our own personality and our own personal growth. So I'm happy to be here at this iteration now, and I hope that I can sort of continue to grow to be less feather ruffling and more wing lifting in the future. So thank you for those words, and thank you for your powerful voice here. And I'm really stoked for your app as well. Like, and together, like separate, but like people using both of them to find the relationships and find the geography and the time, like, it's gonna be wild.
Just so you know, I've got a years old Adobe Illustrator file that has different tabs. One of them's for the music, the Polaris music map thing. One of them's for two sunburst graphs, which are like pie charts that have multiple layers, that shows the like the share of the market that major labels are sort of contributing to versus other labels. And then the third part was a map of where music was recorded, so that you could see where all this music was recorded, which is I don't need to do because you already got it.
Yeah, well, if people use it correctly. I mean, if you have a map with a better data source, because I don't think there's any like standardized field for where it was recorded. I could be wrong on that, but like I've released music through DistroKid and stuff like that, and I don't remember ever having to put in a location, right?
Yeah,
so
that's why I went for the lower hanging fruit of just picking up whatever information's in the CD liner notes and using that.
Powerful.
Very cool. Well, I guess I gotta go right now, but I will wake up early next time to actually show up for the Fractally meeting.
It sounds great. All right. Yeah, see you. And yeah, thanks so much for the great conversation and everything too. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm gonna peace out too. Thank you, Dan, for all of your being.
Yeah,
sounds great. Thank you for all your being too. I'm sorry, was that Andrew?
I said amen to that.
Amen. No, and thank you for all your being too, Andrew.
Yeah, we are all amazing beings. Just the fact our bodies work is a miracle.
Right? I got blood moving all in my body right now. I'm just doing like I'm thinking about it.
I know, it's crazy, right? All right. On that note, I'll see you guys later.
Peace.
All right, cool. See you guys. Have a great day. Bye.
You too. Bye.
See you later, everybody. Nice cough. Sorry about that.